Hello, my name is Jason Schneider, and this is a video presentation of my capstone project on RTI and technology interventions to promote student success. Um, my current teaching job, I teach at Westland High School, which is part of Southwestern City Schools. I'm a high school health phys ed teacher, and as a health teacher, we get a multitude of students at various levels, and so it's very important that we, as a department, make sure we're providing best practices in the classroom that really reach all of our students. Our school as a whole is implementing RTI this year, and um, there's been some staff that struggle to understand it and maybe struggle to make sure that they are um, following what the school is wanting us to implement. So really, when I was thinking through what I wanted to do with my capstone, I thought, what better thing to do than to really kind of focus on what my job is implementing this year, and that's RTI. And so my goal was to create a website that our staff could go to use as a reference and a resource for providing interventions, for collaborating as a staff, and, um, and really just that resource, that quick go-to that a teacher could go to and say, this is what I need to help ensure my students are successful. So I'm going to go through and show you some of the highlights of what I've created, and in fact I've already actually sent out a trial of this to our entire staff, and I've had a couple posts within the collaboration site I'll show you here in a little bit. But technology and the implementation of RTI, Tier 1 interventions to promote student success, is the main premise of what this capstone is. So like I said, the summary is this is really just going to be a resource for teachers to ensure that students are um, being taught through best practices and within that RTI Tier 1 model. The rationale why it's beneficial. Um, this is something that our students and our teachers need. The plan is, like I said, this will be an invaluable resource that will turn into that will turn, that will provide a resource for most of our teachers to be able to use. It will ultimately take some stress off teachers, and and they can refer to this rather than searching aimlessly through the internet. The student will benefit because they receive quality instruction that will help them increase their success in the classroom. The goals, like I said, were to create a reference for teachers to implement differentiation strategies and Tier 1 interventions, and the use of technology to help increase student achievements. It's also provide proven best practices that teachers can implement regularly, integrate student technology into strategies that help further spark interest of the students in the classroom, bridge the gap between the traditional teaching and technology. We still have a lot of teachers that struggle with using technology in the classroom, and some of them maybe honestly, a little scared of it. Provide a reference for scholarly work that will help teachers see a need for differentiation, for interventions, for technology. Um, and then finally, the impact I see is that this is a benefit for staff and students. The resource should provide a benefit for both teachers and students. The goal is to be able to create a fluid website that has new strategies in it and new interventions that teachers can go to and plug information in that they can share. And then my hope is that this site becomes an invaluable tool that teachers will use further than just my introduction of this through my capstone. So let's go ahead and look through here. In some of the research that I had, I was able to find some pretty good stuff on technology and interventions. Um, One of the first ones I had in here was differentiation instruction, meeting students where they are. Really, it focused a lot on something that some people or some teachers may not even really think about it, and that's just getting to know your students. Taking the time to know your students and what makes them tick, and And really, it's an art that you have to master as a teacher in order to be successful within the classroom. So that's one of the first there that I wanted to point out. I'm not going to show them all. I'm just going to give you a couple. Um, One that I thought was kind of funny was it was an older one, and it was talking about PDAs in the classroom. And some of us remember the old PDAs, the personal digital assistants that were around. Um, and it was kind of, I remember when I was in college, and so it was really using that to um, talk about the fact that it's cheaper to use a PDA for classroom interventions rather than a full computer for a district to afford. And so now we have iPads and various other tablets that really students can use to um, that really blow PDAs away. And so I thought that one was kind of funny. Three articles I did find on there that I thought were very good, and some of my students when I was going through these, they were looking at it and they liked them too. Was the link between video games and learning? So video game learning link. It's time we leveled up. There's one. Let me find the other one here. There's two more. Video games and education, why they should be used and how they're being used. And then lastly was conceptualizing RTI in 21st century secondary classroom, science classrooms, video games potential to provide tiered support and progress monitoring for students with learning disabilities. And really a lot of this is focusing on educational games within the classroom as a support for instruction and teaching. And so, um, kids love video games. And one of the stats I read, and one of them I listed in here in my research was that something like 90. Let me find it here. Make sure my stat is correct. I lost the article. Ultimately, what it was that a lot of our students today play video games. It's a really large number, and what the education departments are really looking at is the fact that we need to tap into this resource, this motivational resource that we have, that kids are the kids really love. And so how do we use this to tap into educating students? And if we can find ways to capture that realm in education there, as it says there, it could change the way we teach. Kids could go home and play a game that supports what they're learning in school and really begin to grasp the concepts we want. I included two textbooks in my annotated bibliography that I read for another class that were really good. Differentiated instructional strategies, one size doesn't fit all. And this kind of fits in with that article that I read at the beginning, that you really have to know your students. And we shouldn't be teaching to a middle ground. We need to teach to that student that we have. And that requires us to know our students. That requires us to provide assessments that help us understand where students are. Mathematics and formative assessments. This one gives 75 strategies of formative assessments within the realm of mathematics, and they don't have to be just mathematics. You can apply them to multiple different content areas from what I was able to read through the book. So very great formative assessments, quick, easy things that we can do to understand if a student's getting it. And that's really the essence of a Tier 1 intervention, is understanding what students are getting and what students are not. Last two I wanted to look at were, one was called Face to Face, and it was on Facebook, and it was a section from a book, Teaching Generation M, a handbook for librarians and educators. But this is teaching or face-to-face on Facebook. Students are there, should we be? And really it kind of revolved around the fact that social media has blown up over the past few years. And are we passing up a good opportunity by not implementing something that kids are so fluent with, kids are so into, and kids are so engrossed in? There's that concern over privacy. There's that concern over I really don't want to be able to see what's going on in a student's personal life. That's why Facebook has what we call it's not a personal page. It's more of a like a and the word just left my mind, but it's a page that's more of geared toward businesses, and it's an organization page is what it is. And so your classroom would be considered an organization, and it's not like you friend request people. You create this site that is basically your organization, which is your classroom, and the students come and they like your page, and they can get updates on things that are going on in the classroom. So as a teacher, are we passing up an opportunity to have collaboration and communication with students and parents across the board by not implementing this resource that's available for free? And so that's really the essence of that article. And then the last one was on cell phone use. And cell phones have really become a very powerful tool that we sometimes neglect. Students come in and we tell them to put their cell phones away because they want to text and they want to be on social media network sites, just like I was talking about in the last article. But, you know, how come we can't tap into this? And so to be that teacher that stands at the room in front of the room and yells at students because they have their cell phone versus that teacher that says, okay, take your cell phones out and let's use them to do something. And so sites like Poll Anywhere is a great resource that teachers can implement, where you can provide questions that students can text their responses to, and you can have uh, real-time data that shows, okay, you know, this is my objective for today. This is my I can statement for the day. So what are students getting it? And so, you know, if you look and 90% of the class gets it, you know, you're doing pretty well. But if only 10% is, you know, we need to go back and relook at what we're doing and maybe provide a different strategy to reach that student. So those were a couple of them that I wanted to just kind of point out real quick. So let's move on here to the next section. It's RTI Tier 1 interventions. What is RTI? RTI is a three-tiered system, or a three-tiered program process that really is what I like to consider, you know, especially with all my education now in special ed. It's one of those things that really provides high quality instruction while implementing best practices in the general education classroom. And the big thing, especially for special ed, is that it provides early interventions for struggling students on a multi-tiered set of interventions that really help to free up a lot of unnecessary assessment that tends to be very cumbersome. The IEP process and assessment process that goes along, and the evaluation process that goes along with developing an IEP for a student tends to take time and become a little bit cumbersome at times. And so we want to make sure that we're not having unnecessary evaluations or unnecessary assessments. If a student doesn't need an IEP, there's no reason for that to go through that long process. So RTI is really something that's helped out intervention specialists in the fact that it's going to free up those unnecessary assessments and provide interventions within the general education classroom that a student may become successful once they've had that intervention that's been provided. So the first tier is what we would consider whole group interventions. And so this is, we look at the classroom as a whole and we know some students aren't getting it. So what can we do that's a best practice that will ensure that that student gets it, but also that the entire class gets that good high quality education? I've got about 10 seconds left, so I'm going to pause what I'm saying here now to start another section of video.